Seconds for people to start joining.
Yeah.
Before I say anything.
All good.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third Safety First Aviator. This one is on fatigue management in the general aviation industry. My name is Josh Willow. I'm the Managing Director for Messe Frankfurt, the proud organizers of Aero South Africa, the exhibition for the general aviation industry. I see the numbers are quickly ramping up. We've already got close on 50 people who've joined. So welcome. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules, and a big thank you again to our panelists and to Safety First Aviator. Next one, Andy. Just want to introduce you all if you don't know about it yet. As Aero was supposed to take place this year, we had to postpone it obviously as a result of COVID. We put in place something called the Aero Virtual Marketplace. This is a great platform for you to interact with suppliers and service providers in the general aviation sector. It's free to register. It's open for 12 months. So I encourage you to go and visit the site. Also, all the previous webinars recordings are on the site too, so you can go and watch some of the previous recordings. And then Aero, next year planned for from the 8th to the 10th of July, 2021. At Vonderboom National Airport. We're very excited. We ran the first event last year. It was a great success. We had very positive feedback, and we've already got a very good reception and sign-ups for the exhibition next year. And with that, I'm going to hand over to our very competent and well-dressed show director, Annalie Reynolds for Aero, who's going to take you through the agenda and kickstart the presentations. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Josh. I just want to apologize on Franz Smith's behalf. He really wanted to be part of this webinar tonight, but unfortunately, he is experiencing a power outage, but at least he's in a beautiful area of the country. He's in Gordons Bay. So we'll forgive him tonight for not joining us. So tonight we have Ari Levien from Mayday-SA that's going to kick off the webinar. And then our main speaker for the evening is the very competent and master on fatigue risk management, Wynand Serfontein, that's going to share a lot of tips on how to manage fatigue, especially in the time of COVID and the year that we've just experienced. And then Bollweg from ALPA-SA is going to close the webinar with some insights from his side. And then we're also going to have some time for a question and answer session. So please post your questions and answers in the question and answer box. There's also a chat function where you can chat with the different, all the attendees on the webinar. And back over to you, Josh.
So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker from Mayday-SA, Ari Levien. Ari is enjoying his 31st year of flying as a GA pilot. He is an IT professional with a passion for information security. He is a longtime student of aviation safety and has been a member of Mayday since 2018. Over to you, Ari. Ari, you're on mute.
Yes.
Sorry, guys. Unmute didn't seem to unmute very well. So, We'll start again. I'm very proud to be representing Mayday this evening. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Mayday and what we do, there's a little bit of an introduction. Mayday is a volunteer, peer-based organization, and we're basically there to help people when they've got a problem. And we specialize in aviation license holders, so flight crew, cabin crew, but ATCs, and essentially everybody who's part of the aviation family. And that includes people like the rescue crews at airports, colleagues, and friends of people who are associated with aviation. The next thing that people tend to ask is what sort of crisis? And there are a few that are fairly obvious. Aviation can be horribly unforgiving, and we can assist people through professional crises, whether that's training, loss of medical, or just things that they want to talk to somebody about and are not sure who to speak to. We help people after accidents, whether that's aviation related or not, and generally try and assist people through any form of trauma that they may experience. I think it's very easy to forget the fact that when all is said and done, Mayday is aviation peers. So it's run by people who are passionate about aviation in all of its forms. And we're not professional psychologists. We're concerned individuals with perhaps a bit more of an insight into aviation than a lot of the professionals may have. And as the humorous interlude on your screen shows, that's both a strength and a weakness. We are not professional counselors, but in some ways that gives us a bit of an edge. We can assist for the things that some of the professional counselors may not have as much insight, and give you a bit more of an aviation slant to the assistance that we can provide. When do you need assistance? Essentially, whenever you're feeling traumatized, whenever your coping measures or mechanisms are under pressure, and you're unsure of what you might need assistance with. I think this year has seen all of us dealing with things that we haven't had to deal with previously. I don't think I know anybody that's had to cope with the sort of circumstances that we've experienced surrounding lockdown, job losses, and all of the associated issues surrounding that. Mayday launched a Caring During COVID program, and we've published a number of short brochures and leaflets, some of which you can see on your screen here. And this should be able to give you some idea of what we've tried to assist people with. What to do as an aviator if you are COVID positive. Very topical for today, sleep and stress. And all of these are available from the Mayday website, which I'll post the link at the end. Really, Mayday exists to help aviators and those close to them. And as such, we pride ourselves in our confidentiality. We can, because we're not professionals and because we don't have any affiliation with any other organizations, we can be completely confidential, and people can talk to us about things that perhaps they're not really ready to share with anybody else yet. And I think what is very important is the last values on that slide. I think to me are the most important. You will get honest feedback, and you will get assistance with integrity. Recently, some of the things that we've assisted with following aircraft accidents, we've provided support to business owners, instructors and students following some of the recent incidents. And it's a very challenging environment following an aviation incident. People often don't realize just how much pressure they can put on themselves, and it can be very helpful to talk to somebody who's got some insight. So far, the numbers this year, we've had a total of 49 incidents that we've assisted with. And I think the main draw card for tonight was people wanted to see what was happening around COVID and in such a strange year. And the one thing I just want to highlight is number 7 on this graph is fatigue. And we don't have a single instance of fatigue being reported or used as an incident that somebody wants to speak to somebody about. And hopefully following Wynand's talk, people will start talking about that a bit more. But as everyone can see, the majority of the support that we provided over the last year has been critical incident support. So that's following some sort of aviation accident or incident. There's been a fairly large number of family-related issues that people have wanted to speak to people about. And unsurprisingly, given the really hard-hit aviation industry, a lot of career support. I was quite surprised when we first looked at these numbers to see that general stress was so low. But I also think it's interesting that medical was also as low as it was, given all of the questions that people have had about COVID. I think we can blame some of that on a lot too much being said by people and almost too much information and misinformation out there. I do want to highlight as well that there have been a number of requests for substance abuse assistance, and that is something that we can help with. But really, this should give people some idea of the fact that we assist with a very broad spectrum of issues in people's lives. Unsurprisingly, given the rather unbalanced nature of the aviation industry, the majority of support has been to males, a fairly impressive percentage to females, and a fair number of groups. I say a fairly impressive number to females, that's definitely shows that the females tend to be far less scared of asking for assistance. Guys, it doesn't help to hide it. Ask for it. You'll get it. And as you can see, while we do support in a formal setting, meetings, that sort of thing, we are also able to assist informally and via referrals, phone calls, whatever is necessary. And please, everybody, if you're not sure if Mayday can help, call us and ask. We may well be able to assist, and if not, we'll utilize those virtues of honesty and integrity and tell you that we don't believe it's appropriate. But I haven't seen one of those yet. We've got an emergency number people can phone. That's the phone number in red on the screen. There is a website. For those who are Facebook people, there is also Facebook connection and ordinary email. Please spread the word. If you know of anybody that needs assistance, ask them to speak to us or even give us a call and see maybe we can help. Thank you very much, and back to you, Annelie.
Great. I think we're on to the next speaker. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Wynand Serfontein, who's a fatigue risk management specialist. Wynand has been with SAA for 24 years and is a senior captain on the A330 with over 14,700 flying hours on both short and long haul flying operations. He has been an FRMS specialist for the past 8 years at South African Airways, responsible for overall fatigue management for both pilots and cabin crew. This includes implementation and compliance of the FRMS on ultra long range operations, assessing crew fatigue within operations, adherence to FRMS policy and regulations, interactions with all stakeholders, unions, regulator, IATA and ICAO, ongoing relevant fatigue education, fatigue and human factor investigation in instance, and accidents and participation in relevant work groups, assisting airlines and regulators overcome the challenges in fatigue management implementation. He is also further involved in human factors training. Thank you very much, Wynand. Over to you.
All righty, thank you, Joshua. Just before I get going, I'd like to support Ari and his team. I'm a huge fan of Mayday. Don't let your ego get in the way. These are tough times. These are stressful times. And I've seen them in action. I've had friends who've been through it. Please use it if you need. Because where this leads into with my presentation, these are stressful times. Job security, financial stress, change in our work environment, people moving, causes stress. The more stressed we are, the less we sleep. The less we sleep, the more stressed we become, and it becomes a vicious circle. So trying to handle the stress, there's only one way that I can truly assist from my side, and that's to try and give you some tips on how to sleep a little bit better, if you can. The trick, though, is to follow some of these guidelines. Often, when I speak to people about insomnia, often it's 80% of the things that we have control of that we're not doing well that affect our sleep. Most insomniacs, it's normally only 20% that's internal. There are many things we can do that can help us sleep better. So what I'm going to do, focuses more on a personal intervention about what you can do to try and improve your fatigue better, or your sleep better. Let's talk more about sleep. I'm going to cover sleep and the circadian rhythm. Those are the main two elements that ICAO and IATA recommend that we teach to not only crew, anybody, any shift worker, anybody who is awake when they should be asleep. We try to get this information too. I'll cover a couple of factors that affect our sleep. I will then talk briefly about our habits, what we can do to try to sleep better. We don't have a lot of time. I may speak quite quickly, move through my slides, but there's quite a lot of information I'd like to get through. But where are we right now? Hold on. Changing fatigue risks. Okay, there's this perception in the aviation industry at the moment that fatigue is not an issue because airlines, charter companies, training schools are not working as hard, not doing as many hours. And so the fatigue risk has actually gone away. We've tried to extend flight and duty, but fatigue is always an issue. We've got to take into account the personal factors, the changing environments that our personnel are working in. So moving forward, the changing fatigue risk could be reduction of staff levels. So many companies have reduced their staff. When they start ramping up again, firstly, the bean counters are going to have their focus on the numbers. So they're not going to be keen to hire more staff. So the remaining staff are going to work longer and more intense hours. There's added measures now through health and safety with COVID, cleaning of areas, aircraft, screening passengers, dealing with disruptive passengers who may not want to wear masks or don't want to sit where they're told. And then the ones that I'm most worried about, and through Mayday, through Yaku, through Wendy, we've been talking about the personal life of crew. But some of the factors going forward is many people may have taken up alternate or secondary employment, which means they're going to have less time off to sleep, less free time when they start working again. There's lots of change in home circumstances. We're homeschooling now. We may have had to move. There's financial stresses. possible increase in commute times. You know, there's less public transport now. There's less flights for people like me who work commuted to get to work. So it's going to be extended work times. And then naturally the change in crew physical and mental fitness. We haven't been able to get to the gym to stay fit. We maybe become lethargic. We're not feeling that good about things, so we're not training. So there are many factors that we're going to have to look at, which I've always done in fatigue risk management. Personal factors are a factor. We need to take that into account. Companies need to take responsibility for that. So let's start off with the definition of fatigue. I like to use ICAO's definition of fatigue. The reason for this, it appears in the fatigue risk manual for operators, the fatigue risk manual for air traffic controllers, and the one for regulators. There are many definitions of fatigue, but in aviation, this is the one we will be using. And what does it say? So it's a physiological state of reduced mental or physical performance resulting from four things, which is not getting enough sleep, being awake for too long, where we are at the time of day, or the workload that we are doing, be it mental workload or physical workload. And this naturally impairs our ability to perform those safety-related duties. So this is a long definition. I've split it into this slide. So what does it mean? Firstly, mental and or physical. We tend to think of fatigue as just a mental issue. Okay, we need to get away from that. Fatigue is a mental and physical issue. In fact, when we sleep, our bodies spend more time physically recovering than mentally. If you think, when does your heart get a chance to rest? When does your liver get a chance to rest? When do your kidneys get a chance to rest? They're always working. The only time they can rest is when you're sleeping. And they rest mainly during that deep sleep. So always remember, it's mental and physical. A tired body ends up being a sick body. Sleep loss, so it's mental or physical fatigue caused by these four things. Sleep loss, so naturally not getting enough sleep, and not getting enough sleep is the #1 determinator of how we feel, of our tiredness and our fatigue. If we don't sleep enough, we will always feel tired. Where we are in the day, so the circadian phase, there are times in the day where we are designed to sleep. There are times in the day when we're designed to be awake. And we need to understand that when we're managing our fatigue. It's no use going to sleep at 9 o'clock in the morning and thinking you're going to sleep for 5 hours because you're going against your circadian rhythm. Being awake for too long, if we normally sleep for 8 hours, we're awake for 16 hours. Anytime we're awake longer than we normally are awake, we're going to start feeling tired. And then workload. Workload depends on the context. Okay, an airline pilot sits on his backside in the cockpit, and lots of stuff is taken care of for us to make sure we're not distracted. So it's more of a mental fatigue. Our cabin crew, they've got to be polite to passengers. They've got to deal with queries, but there's lots of physical work, helping passengers with bags. They're always on their feet. They're pushing trolleys. So we need to take into context that they're not just mental, it's physical as well. Our technical staff, mental and physical, they need to work on the aircraft and record what they've done, and often late at night. So we've got to look at the context of the workload that's happening to understand this fatigue. And all of these factors together can impair our alertness. So if we understand each of these, there can be one or two of them or a combination of all of them that can cause fatigue. And we need to understand in our specific context what the fatigue means. So why do we sleep? I've mentioned already, it's for mental restoration and physical. What happens in mental restoration? We defrag our brain. It assists the more we sleep with our memory. We can focus better. We're much better at problem solving, coming up with alternate plans, coming up with innovative ways of doing our work. Physical, very important. Hormones are secreted when we sleep, mostly in our deep sleep, and we grow, maintain our muscles. Our organs are very important. And my favorite is it is very important to restore and activate our immune system. Any managers out there, safety managers, fatigue managers, who ever want to track one indicator, try track overtime versus your sick rates. The more tired your crew become, the more susceptible they become to get flu and flu-like symptoms. And you'll notice that I can almost guarantee that your sick rates will go up if you don't penalize your crew for booking off sick. So the two things we are going to focus on regarding sleep is going to be the sleep science. And this comes from ICAO. They want us to talk mainly about sleep and what happens when you don't sleep enough and how to recover from that sleep loss, and the circadian rhythm. We have these cycles in the day where we feel better and we feel more tired, we feel more alert. and it's understanding how this affects the way we sleep and we recover from our sleep. So I'll be focusing mainly on those two aspects. So here we have a graph called a histogram of sleep. This comes from the NASA Counter Fatigues program. I was lucky enough to attend 2 courses in San Francisco at Moffett Field, where NASA were disseminating the information they'd learned from the space program into general industry, not only aviation, across trucking, shipping, the military, the medical profession, you name it. We met many different professions attending these courses. And what we've got here on the vertical scale are our stages of sleep, and our horizontal scale, the time of day. When I talk about stages of sleep, we generally sleep in 5 stages. 1 stage of what we call rapid eye movement. Why? Because your eyes move when you're sleeping. You're generally tracking your dreams. And 4 stages of non-rapid eye movement. Okay. In some books, you'll read that the stage 3 and 4 are combined, but I work on these 4 stages. Your rapid eye movement sleep, that's when you dream. It's quite a light stage of sleep. To prevent yourself from acting out your dreams, you're paralyzed, so you cannot move. And you spend roughly 1/3 of the night in this rapid eye movement sleep, and it's mainly your mental restoration. Non-rapid eye movement sleep, this is what we call our deep sleep or delta wave sleep. To note a bit further down here, it's when our bodies are physically restored. The majority of our time spent there, our muscle is restored. We grow if we're still growing. If we're sick, our immune system is boosted. This is when we're in deep sleep, when you normally struggle to wake up. You feel a bit groggy when you wake up. Sometimes it's so bad, it takes a while for you to get back on task, that we call sleep inertia. I'm not going to focus on that. That's more irrelevant if you're sleeping on aircraft. We spend about 2/3 of our time physically restoring our bodies in deep sleep. We're not paralyzed during this. We relax, our breathing slows, we become very calm, our blood pressure goes down, our heart rate goes down, we head into that deep sleep and our body is physically restored. So what I want to show you is how we cycle through this. It should take you roughly 15 to 20 minutes to fall asleep. If you're falling asleep in under 10 minutes, a clear sign you're not getting enough sleep. And we cycle straight into what we call our deep non-REM sleep, and you'll cycle through these phases. First phase, normally about 2 hours. You see we get a little bit of rapid eye movement sleep. After like 2 hours of sleep, maybe cycle through another deep sleep cycle, physically restoring. You see, now we're sort of halfway through the night. We're getting less deep sleep. We start getting most of our rapid eye movement sleep. What I want to point out here, most of our physical restoration happens in the first half of the night. Most of our mental restoration happens in the second half of the night. If you wake up during the night, you need to go to the bathroom and you climb back into bed and fall asleep, your body doesn't start at the beginning again. It knows where it's been and it'll just kick on again. What you don't want is too many awakenings throughout this period, because then effectively you're shortening your sleep. So this is generally how our body sleeps. It's very important to go through all these cycles. It's very important that it's continuous, and then it's consolidated in not too many awakenings during the night. Just to look at some factors that affect our sleep, I'm just going to put this up briefly, the age, but I'm going to go back to the graph. So age has a huge effect on the way we sleep. The older we get, roughly from 50 onwards, we just start struggling to get this deep sleep. And it's purely a degenerative function of aging. And I've seen it more in our crew from sort of 60 onwards, where they start complaining that they can't stay asleep for long periods. We can't just get the same amount of deep sleep, which means that most of our sleep happens in this light phase of sleep. So things like your bladder, your partner moving, the dog barking, wakes us up, and we tend to have more fragmented sleep. Into your 70s, you can generally only sleep 5 to 6 hours at night, and you find people in their 70s generally napping more during the day as well to compensate for it. This fallacy that the older we get, the less sleep we need is rubbish. Roughly from the age of 23 onwards, what sleep you needed at 23, you generally need for the rest of your life. And for 99% of us, it's between 7 and 9 hours. Okay. If you ever use the term, I'm coping with 6 hours or I'm managed with 6 hours, that's all you're doing. You'll find sometime during the day, reaching for that Red Bull, that cup of coffee, or saying, I can't wait for a nap. And I certainly don't want somebody making a decision about my future, bragging about the fact they only survive on 4 hours of sleep a night, because I guarantee sometime when they're making that decision, they're cognitively not thinking the way they should be had they had 7 or 8 hours of sleep. So that's the age. The next one is our quality versus quantity, which I've spoken about. It should be a continuous 8 hours with good quality sleep. Okay. Alcohol, huge effect on our sleep. Alcohol in its purest form is a sedative. So what happens is, and I used to try this, I've done this, I've tested this theory. You drink, you think, okay, now I'm going to sleep. And yes, you climb into bed, you've had 4, 5, 6 drinks. You climb into bed, you fall fast asleep immediately. It doesn't take you 10 minutes to fall asleep, it takes you a minute. But because alcohol is a sedative, for as long as it's activated in your system, it keeps you in that deep, deep sleep. And once the alcohol starts coming out of your system, you wake up and you go, oh, not again. Thirsty, your heart's racing, you've got a headache. So you go have your 2 tablets, drink a bit of water, climb back into bed, and yes, you fall asleep, but you find your sleep is very fragmented because the side effects of the alcohol keep waking you up. So alcohol, in effect, shortens your sleep and it fragments your sleep. Yes, 1 or 2 drinks is okay. Just to relax. We always say, I'm going home to relax, I'm going to have a drink. It's not the drink that relaxes you, it's the environment that you're drinking that generally relaxes you, because you can be yourself. Okay, so be careful about the way you use alcohol when it comes to sleep. Environment, very important. You need 4 things to sleep well in your environment. It must be quiet, it must be cool, it must be dark, and it must be comfortable. When I say it's quiet, no TV, music in the background. If you need some noise to drown out something that's going on in your neighborhood, you need what we call white noise, like an air conditioner going. Okay. It must be dark, which means no phone, no lights on. Don't look at your phone when you wake up. Try get blackout curtains. I mean, here in Durban, where I live, the sun's up here at 4 o'clock in the morning. So if you don't have dark curtains, you'll wake up. It must be cool. They even recommend, if you can, 18 degrees Celsius. Why? Because when we go to sleep, our body is in the cooling phase of its body temperature, which is one of the circadian rhythms. Our body wants to cool down to get better sleep at night. So the cooler your room is, you're facilitating that cooling down of the body, and it assists you getting into sleep quicker and staying in the deeper sleep. Okay. Sleep disorders will affect you. I'm not going to talk much about them, but ICAO are very and a lot of regulators want us to talk about sleep disorders because they're more prevalent than we realize. Things like snoring, where it's snorting, it may not wake you up, but it moves you to a lighter stage of sleep. Sleep apnea, where you can't sleep and breathe at the same time. Fall asleep, you stop breathing, you snort when you gasp for that air, may not wake you up, but it moves you to a lighter stage of sleep. Insomnia, mostly due to stress, you just can't switch off your mind. But what's good about all of these, they can be treated. So know that sleep disorders exist. If you always think you're sleeping well and you wake up tired, maybe go see your doctor, look for a sleep specialist, and it can be treated. And lastly, medications can have an effect. Just know what's in the medication. Is it an alerting factor? You're not going to fall asleep. Or is a sedative factor, and when you want to be awake, you feel tired. So just know what's in medication. All right. So these are the factors that affect our sleep. Very short presentation on the sleep, but know how you sleep, the factors that affect it. Okay, your circadian rhythm, very important determinator in your sleeping patterns. Right, so we have many circadian rhythms in our body. We have an alertness circadian rhythm. We have a digestive circadian rhythm. We have a hormonal circadian rhythm. We have a temperature circadian rhythm. And all these rhythms work together to get us through the day. Every organism in the world has some sort of rhythm within it. We need these rhythms to survive, to give our body these signals of when to sleep, when to be awake, when to eat, when not to eat, to help us survive. Old science, Professor Franz Holberg, back in the 50s, a German gentleman, studied this, eventually moved it on to humans. Why is it important to us? I'm going to use this graph. This has alertness on the vertical scale, timer down the horizontal scale. This is from 6 in the evening to 6 the next evening. This alertness signal in our body is very strong. Okay, so you can see, you know, often when you get back from work, you just can't wait to get home. You feel tired, and you can't wait to get on the couch. But when you get home, you sort of get this burst of energy. You can help with dinner. You can help with the kids. All of a sudden, you feel good again. It's not because you're home. It's because you're getting a great boost from your body. It says, you've had a long day, I'm going to give you this boost through your circadian rhythm. Then come 9, 10 o'clock, we go to bed, the alertness levels go down. This is when we sleep our best. We sort of wake up at 6, alertness levels are not so good. But here from 9 to 12, great time to be awake, and then we always get that afternoon dip. Why is this important? These are difficult times to sleep, from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, especially from 9 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock. Okay, and these are difficult times to be really awake and alert. So we teach this to our crew. We say, if you're planning to sleep, rather sleep in the afternoon. Let's say you've got a night flight, rather sleep here from 3 till 6 in the afternoon. Don't try to sleep from 6 till 9 because you're going to struggle to sleep. Okay, and then my all-time favorites. Okay, then let's say again in the morning. Let's say you work through the night. Yes, if you're a night freight pilot, yes, you climb into bed at 7 or 8, you fall asleep, but for some reason you wake up at 10, 11, 12 o'clock and you wonder why. It's because this alerting signal is overcoming your desire to sleep. So people who sleep in the day struggle to sleep a full 8 hours. Okay. Often we get complaints about early starts. You have to start early in the morning, many days in a row. And we always complain about the early start. And I get the reports, I go to my manager saying, our crew are complaining about the early starts. What do they say? Just tell them to go to bed earlier, which is not possible. We generally fall asleep when we become used to falling asleep at a certain time. Okay, so my time is between 9 and 10 o'clock. I go to bed then. If I climb into bed at 7 o'clock, I still won't fall asleep until 9 o'clock because of this wake maintenance zone. So the threat to early mornings is not the waking up early. The threat to early mornings is the fact we cannot just go to bed earlier. Okay. So why is sleep so important? For many reasons. It's good for our memory, concentration, improves our motor response, our decision making, especially our perception of risk. Check next time when you're driving home and you're tired. You start taking more chances. You start driving a bit faster. You take that gap. You jump the road a bit more when you're more tired. Try to compare that when you're driving to work and sometimes when you're driving back from work. Definitely when we're more tired, we struggle to control our emotions. We become more aggressive. We have a much shorter fuse. All right. For me, though, my biggest signal I'm getting tired is I do struggle with my memory. I cannot retrieve stuff the way I normally do. So when I start struggling to pull facts out of my head, and then I know I'm starting to get tired. Right, so it has a big impact on your memory. To sleep, sleeping is very important to consolidate what you've learned throughout the day. It's a complex multi-phase process that happens while we're sleeping, and we need the sleep to improve our learning and to improve our memory, because they've done studies. They've taken control groups. One only gave 6, so they taught everybody the same thing, gave one group 6 hours of sleep, gave another group 8 hours of sleep, tested them over a couple of days, and the ones who slept 8 hours had a much better learning and recall and remembering facts performance than the ones who only had the 6 hours of sleep. Decision making has a huge effect. Okay, if you've got to make a big decision, I'll put you on the bottom, sleep on it. Never make big decisions if you're tired. So if you're going to buy a car, a house, going to get married, if you're going to move, make sure the family has slept well. Because when we are tired, we battle to deal with the unexpected. When we are thrown a curveball, the shock takes a lot longer to overcome before we become active again. We're not very good at coming up with new ways of doing things. We tend to stick to a plan. We don't like to revise our plans. We get fixated, and it always affects our communication. I always said a quiet cockpit is a tired cockpit. The more tired we are, the more we struggle to speak. Why? Because speaking and talking is an effort. When we're tired, we don't want to do it. So nice slide I got out of an IATA presentation, the link between fatigue and safety. On the left, I've got the factors I've been discussing, the time of day, time since awake, task-related factors, the workload. Demographic factors I'm talking about, is it different in age, short haul versus long haul? Have you been off for long? You know, it takes, we become flying fit depending whether you're flying freight flight, night flight, long haul, short hops. The more you do it, the better you get at adapting it. So that's when I'm talking about demographic factors. And these all affect our fatigue and sleep. If we put good rules in place and fatigue risk management, and we follow a well-researched flight and duty, we end up having our rest and our sleep and a safe recovery. If we don't do it, it does impair our performances. If we don't block it, safety is compromised. Okay. So just some good sleep habits. If you struggle to sleep, here are some tips that could help you sleep. I'm not saying they'll all work. Maybe you're doing some of them, but if you are struggling or you think you could sleep better, if you follow some of these, you'll do a lot better. And I'd follow a lot of these rules. The number one improvement tip I can give you is to try to keep a regular sleep-wake schedule. It means trying to go to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time, even on weekends, even on your off time, because you want to teach your body that habit. We do think sometimes we're very complex individuals and human beings, but we can be taught simple behaviors, that cognitive behavior. And this is one of them. I know it's tough sometimes, but on your off days, if you can go to bed roughly the same time and wake up roughly the same time, you're going to do a great service to improving how you sleep. And the second biggest one are these things. Stay away from the phones. They're the second biggest, well, actually, they're probably becoming the biggest influence of our sleep going forward. It's the blue light. It's the want to stay connected. It's the FOMO, fear of missing out. It's wondering what time it is when you wake up. When I put my alarm on and I put my phone down, I do not look at it until the alarm goes. The first thing I do when I wake up is think, how quickly can I go back to sleep? Do not get distracted by your phones. Do not look at them. The blue light suppresses the secretion of melatonin. Yes, you may switch off your phone at 10 o'clock, fall asleep at 11, but because the melatonin is only starting to secrete, then you don't get into as deep a sleep. And by the time you're getting to maximum melatonin, your body starts realizing it's time to wake up and your alarm goes off. You don't get the same quality of sleep. I say use your bedroom for sleep and sex only. What I mean by that is your bedroom must be a calming environment. When you head towards your bedroom, you must start relaxing immediately. No TVs. Do not fight in the bedroom. No work in the bedroom. Your bedroom should be neat. It should have what you see as warm, comforting colors. Keep your bedroom a calming place. I've spoken already, don't check your phone when you wake up. If you do struggle to sleep, try to do the same thing every night before you go to bed. So if you like to have a bath, then redo that. If you like to have a cup of milk with a whiskey, go for a walk, then go to bed. If you do the same thing every night, you can be like Pavlov's dog. You can start a reaction in your body that starts you relaxing because it recognizes the cues. A quiet and comfortable sleep environment I've spoken about. Don't eat heavily close to bedtime. Your digestive system is an alerting system in your body. It takes a lot of blood and enzymes and energy. You'll find your heart rate even goes up while you're digesting a big meal and you struggle to fall asleep. Okay. Same with drinking. It's an alerting mechanism. I always say don't drink a lot of liquids close to bedtime because your bladder is going to wake you up. Don't be a clock watcher. If you have a clock in your room, get rid of it. You don't want to know what the time is once you've gone to bed. I was so strict with that. Even if I was in a hotel room and there was a clock, I would block it off with the menu. I never want to know what the time is until my alarm goes off. Caffeine, an interesting one. Caffeine is personal to holder. Some people can drink coffee all day, so it doesn't affect their sleep. I know a lady, she doesn't drink coffee after 12 o'clock midday, says it affects her sleep. Physiologically impossible, but that's her belief and she sticks to it. Just know, if you drink caffeine close to bedtime, it may not affect your sleep, but because of the caffeine, you won't get into as deep a sleep, right? So if you feel you're not sleeping well, maybe just look at how much coffee you're drinking in a day. Okay, there was a doctor who was struggling to sleep. I read an article. He didn't realize how much coffee he was drinking. By the time they tracked him, he didn't know he was drinking 20 cups of coffee a day, and it was affecting his sleep. Alcohol, I've spoken about. Don't use alcohol as a sleep aid. If you struggle to sleep at night, don't nap during the day at all. Okay, if I just fall asleep watching that boring Grand Prix for 10 minutes in the afternoon, I might as well not go to bed till 12 o'clock because I stay awake. No strenuous exercise close to bedtime. Don't exercise heavily close to bedtime. They did some studies in one of the Nordic states. I think I met a Denmark doctor who they did extreme sport. If they did extreme sport, they found it could take up to 8 hours for the body to relax to the pre-exercise state. So it does take a lot of time if you've done heavy exercise for your body to calm down. And naturally, if you're not asleep within 30 minutes, if you can, get out of bed. The reason for this, they say your mind starts associating your bed with being awake. The more you lie in bed, the more you stay awake. If you get out of bed, go find you sit in a chair with sort of a dim light and read a book till you're ready to fall asleep. Because you're going to lose that sleep anyway. And you're lying in bed thinking, I need to sleep, I can't sleep. You start fighting with yourself. Rather get out of bed, go do something calming, and come back to bed when you're ready. You're going to lose it anyway, but at least when you get back to bed, you'll fall asleep. If you don't like to do that, look up some meditation techniques where you're going to calm yourself back in the bedroom, where you can take your mind off what you're thinking about. Okay. Just the last slide I want to take out for today. If you're looking for good stuff on sleep, look at the sleepfoundation.org or sleep.org. And this is a great slide I got from that. But I'd just like to show you, in the blue is what they recommend the amount of sleep you need. The light blue may be appropriate and the yellow is not recommended. And you can see most of us here between like 18, 64, even up to 65, but between 18 and 64, they recommend 7 to 9 hours, maybe 6, maybe 10, but the majority of us 7 to 8 hours. Even 65 onwards, we need our 7 to 8 hours of sleep. This is what they're recommending. And with that, I'd just like to thank you for listening. It was a lot of information in a short space of time. And I hope it is of assistance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wynand. I personally found that presentation absolutely fascinating, and I think it's something that everyone struggles with, regardless of what industry you're in at the moment, and all the pressure that we've had to go through with COVID this year. And I do also think that a lot of people don't take their sleep seriously enough. So a very good, interesting presentation. We'll now go on to our final presentation by Carl Bollweg from ALPA-SA. Just to introduce Carl qualified for his SAAF wings in July 1983. He joined Comair in November 1993. In September 2000, he moved to SAA and was retrenched in September 2020. Carl is the president of ALPA-SA and also the IFALPA regional vice president of the AFI South region. Thank you, Carl, and over to you.
Oh, thanks, Josh. Wynand, you nailed it when you said that even today, fatigue is a problem. The flying has picked up, but there are less crews doing a lot of flying. So yeah, believe it or not, it is becoming a problem. What I want to talk about is we've identified that the current FTLs, the flight time duty periods, there were some deficiencies, and we highlighted that through an ALPA survey. And then I just want to talk about these deficiencies, and I don't want to go into too much detail what our proposals were, because that's a whole discussion on its own. So we posed these questions a couple of questions to our members, and I just would like to highlight a couple of things here. First one was, over the last 2 months, how often was fatigue experienced as a result of your job as a pilot? And 30% of the crews experience fatigue once a week. That is 1 in 3 pilots. And just the next slide, please, Anleen. We said, okay, this is quite interesting. 70% of the pilots disagreed that rest periods were sufficient to ensure that they were adequately rested before each flight. And this just points out that there are deficiencies with the current FTLs. The next one is pretty interesting. Here we go, thank you. For a 6 o'clock sign-on, 94% of crews had to wake up 2 hours or more before sign-on. And as you saw from what Wynand was saying now, in order to get a good night's sleep, one would have to go to bed at, say, 8 o'clock at night. And as we saw there's no sleep pressure, so you're actually wasting your time. So you're lucky if you fall asleep at about 10 o'clock, which will give you 6 hours sleep. Well, do that 4 days in a row, and you're like a Bobbejaan and a Sputnik. Just the next slide, please. This is interesting. 68% of pilots felt that they should have turned around or should have not done the flights. So now you must ask yourself why. And the answer is straightforward. They were afraid of losing their jobs. Thanks, Andy. Those are the slides I wanted to go through. So what these polls showed to us that there was an urgent need for intervention. Now, the prime objective of a flight and duty scheme is to ensure that flight crew members are adequately rested before signing on a flight. Now, the emphasis has moved from how much flying or how many hours to what do you actually need, how much time you need to recover after having flown and be ready for the next flight. So the current flight, if a flight crew, the current scheme has been in place for about 50 odd years without any significant review. However, industry has changed a lot, has moved on with the advent of low-cost carriers, short-haul operations, flying multiple sectors with early start and late finishes. And those are really high-level workloads. So let's have a quick look at the deficiencies in the current legislation. First of all, there's inadequate definitions of scenarios for an early start and a late finish. And as you saw from Wynand's slide, which was, it's basically the science. So we said, and in fact, we got this from IASA and from ALPA Annex 6. So we defined an early start as a period starting between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning, and a late finish between midnight and 2. That's in the local, the time zone, the local time zone of which crews are acclimatized. Now, research has also shown that anything more than 3 consecutive of these periods, you start looking for trouble. So we said, okay, we need legislation on that. We also looked at the change what a local night means. So it's a period of 8 consecutive hours in a period from 10 o'clock at night to 8 o'clock in the morning. So that's changed. The current one is still 6 o'clock. So we need, and that basically, that will give you that continuous sleep opportunity. Then we also looked at is commuting time. Now, if you had to go to work 20 to 30 years ago, what would take you in those days, what would take you 30 to 45 minutes to get to work could actually take you up to 2 hours. And that doesn't apply to getting to work. That also means getting home. So now you've done a late flight, well, it could land in the afternoon, or maybe a late evening flight. It gets you another 2 hours to get home. And then you get home, and then there's no way you're going to get home or get to the hotel for that matter and get to your room and fall asleep. That's just not going to happen. The current regulations regarding standby and duty time is pretty vague. And we decided we needed changes on that too. Well, the current legislation says your standby period, you could be on standby for 8 hours, then you could be called out to do a 10-hour period. So that can actually take you up to 20 hours of duty time. So our proposal was that your awake time should be limited to 18 hours. Then we also made suggestions on the maximum duty days in a row, basically spoke about that, the maximum duty hours, the maximum flying hours, and the rest periods. That's most important for the rest periods. So regarding the rest periods, is you need 2 consecutive nights of unrestricted sleep. So yeah, you could have a 48 hours period, let's say starting at midnight. So you actually, the first night, starting at midnight, you might get home you might fall asleep at 2 o'clock in the morning. So that first night is not a unrestricted sleep. Whereas you could even give someone a 40-hour rest starting at 8 o'clock at night, and that will guarantee 2 full consecutive nights of rest. The current regulations do not provide for a system for reporting fatigue. Another one here is excessive extensions of flight and duty allowances. In other words, captain's discretion. The current legislation says you can actually, depending on whether you have an augmented crew or not, but you can extend for 3 to 4 hours. But you know what it's like. You say, okay, well, we have to get this, you know what pilots are like. They want to get the job done. So you have to make the decision. Can we extend our flight and duty? Yeah, right now I'm feeling fine, but I can promise you in 3 to 4 hours time, you're going to feel like death warmed up. So we said any extension should be limited to 1 hour. So if you look at ICAO SARPs, they define, or they talk about 2 distinct methods for managing fatigue. Namely, one is the prescriptive approach, and then FRMS, Fatigue Risk Management System. So with the prescriptive approach, the service provider has to comply with duty time limitations defined by the state. Now, FRMS is a performance-based approach that requires the service provider to implement FRMS that is approved by the state. Now, before we can go into this, there are 2 very important principles of FRMS. First of all, you must have a prescriptive FTL scheme based on science, and then you must have a just culture. I think we're a long way off with both of them. So there are 2 important, there are a couple of important factors with regards to these schemes. First of all, they must be based on scientific principles, and that's what Wynand has alluded on. Secondly, is a knowledge of operational experience. And then most important, fatigue management is a shared responsibility between the state, the service provider, and the individual. So what ALPA did in, May 2016, our proposal went to CARCOM. So our proposal was based on IFALPA, the International Federation of Airline Pilots Association, Annex 6, which was based on the MEBIS aviation study. And we also incorporated regulations from CAP 371 with the UK CAA and EASA. So for 2 years, nothing happened because it was ALPA and the industry. And we were at loggerheads, and we couldn't come to an agreement. Yet it wasn't really about the limits. Yes, they were conservative, but it was more about how to manage those limits. So after 2 years, fortunately, the CA came to its senses and it realized that, hey, that they have to take charge of this project of ours. And it was agreed that we would look at the EASA limits, which is fine. They work. It's, as I said, it's all about how to manage those limits, because EasyJet flies to the EASA limits, they manage those limits, and they don't really have fatigue issues. So we said we were looking at the EASA limits, and secondly, we got Rhodes University. They would provide the scientific research for this project. So when are we going to see a new FTL scheme? I don't know. But what I do know is one day when it does get promulgated, I think it's going to be a very good one. And that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you very much, Carl and Wynand and Ari. Great presentations, I think very engaging. We had close on 60 people who attended this evening, so thank you to all the attendees. It just shows what a hot topic this is. We do have one question that has come in, and we do encourage everyone to post questions. You can post as an anonymous attendee, as this person has done. They've asked, I have restless leg syndrome, which I know affects my sleep, as well as panic attacks. Any suggestions? So I don't know, Carl or Wynand, if you would like to answer that, or?
Yes, sure. I can take it. I actually have a slide on it. We do teach a restless leg syndrome. So it is that itchiness, that creepy crawly feeling in the legs. It's very real. It doesn't happen to a lot of people. It's generally hereditary. It's in the genes. It's definitely worse at night, especially when you're lying down or you're sitting. There are some medications you can take. I'm not too aware of what their names are. I've met a couple of people who suffer from this, but the only way to really cope with it, it's not something you can get rid of, is to try exercise more. try and get that regular sleep, although it's sort of counterintuitive because it's affecting your sleep. And then lastly, if you can try reduce caffeine, alcohol, and tobacco, that can help. Unfortunately, that's about the limit of my suggestions.
Carl, anything you'd like to add?
No, nothing from my side.
Okay. I see, yeah, I mean, we don't have any other questions posted, but I think the presentations were very detailed. Again, it was very impactful, especially for me, because I've been a sufferer of insomnia for the last 10 years. So some useful tips and tricks that I'll try to take on board myself. And yeah, just again, a big thank you to all the panelists, to all the attendees. We are now at 8 o'clock, which is the time that we said we would finish the webinar. If you do have questions or any additional information you would like, please do get in touch with us. Annalie Reynolds at Messe Frankfurt. We'll be sending out the webinar links to all attendees in the next day or so with her information included. So thank you. Have a good night. Take care. Stay safe, and look forward to seeing you all soon.